I am Professor A. Jayagovind speaking on the Agreement on Agriculture. The Agreement on Agriculture represents an uneasy compromise between the European Community and the USA. It was a solution to avoid the trade war between them, unlike other agreements laying down the code of conduct prospectively. Agreement on Agriculture is one of the most complex agreements in the WTO. That is because it was to solve some of the pressing issues between European Community and the USA. Agriculture was pushed out of the GATT because of the waiver sought by the USA in 1951 to avoid the compliance with the penal ruling on a complaint filed by Netherlands. What happened was, original GATT covered the agriculture as well, but the US sought a waiver from the obligations because Netherlands filed a complaint against the USA regarding import restrictions which it imposed upon dairy products from Netherlands. The panel ruled in favor of the Netherlands. The USA was reluctant to comply with the panel report. Hence, the Netherlands instead of complying with the panel report, the USA sought a waiver from the GATT obligations. So hence the agriculture was effectively pushed out of the GATT. The Uruguay round was prolonged because of the issues relating to agriculture. Both the USA and EC had a huge agriculture surplus, mainly arising out of the subsidy payments. Hence, their main focus was upon providing for market access and the reduction of domestic support, including the export subsidies. Here, what happened was, the USA was the highest exporter of the agricultural products and also second highest importer. European Community was the highest importer of agricultural goods and second highest exporter. Both of them had a lot of agriculture surplus to dispose of. They wanted other countries to open up their markets. At the same time, this agriculture surplus was due to various subsidies given to agriculturists. The US and EC wanted to reduce these subsidies, but vested interests were opposing for any reduction. Hence, there was an effort to build agriculture subsidy reduction into the WTO agreement. Well, agreement consists of three parts actually. One is relating to market access, another is relating to domestic support, third relating to export subsidies. With regard to market access, Article 4 provides that all countries must convert their non-tariff barriers into tariffs and reduce them over a period of time. And under Article 2, no member shall use any non-tariff barrier thereafter. There are a number of non-tariff barriers such as quantitative restrictions, voluntary export restraint, etc., etc. All members are supposed to convert these non-tariff barriers into tariffs, and these tariffs have to be reduced over a period of time. Developed countries are expected to reduce these tariffs by 36% over a period of 6 years starting from 1995, while developing countries reduce them by 24% over 10 years. The developing countries were shortchanged here since they had very few non-tariff barriers, whereas developed countries had lots of non-tariff barriers. Hence, there was not much liberalization at the end of the implementation period. Because of large number of non-tariff barriers, the tariff barriers or tariffs on agricultural products were very much high in developed countries. This, even after reduction over a period of time, considerable tariff barriers remained in developed countries, whereas in developing countries there was more liberalization at the end of reduction of tariffs. The Agreement on Agriculture aims at market-oriented agriculture trading system, but practically for every country, agriculture is too fundamental and sensitive to subject it to the market forces. This is the dilemma which continues even to this day. All major disputes center around domestic support given by the countries. The issue is that any subjection of agriculture to the market discipline means countries have to undertake external or international commitments in this area. Since agriculture is too sensitive to every country, naturally countries are reluctant to undertake international commitments. Even when they undertake international commitments, they found it extremely hard to implement those commitments. This lies at the root of problem relating to agriculture. The Agreement on Agriculture provided for the concept of aggregate measure of support, which was fixed as of 1988. It was defined as the annual level of support provided by an agricultural product in favor of the producers of the basic agricultural product, and non-product specific support provided in favor of the products in general. Total aggregate measurement of support consists of all product specific support and non-product specific support. The total AMS or aggregate measurement of support shall be reduced by developed countries by 20% over a period of 6 years. The developing countries are expected to reduce them by 13.3% over a period of 10 years. The subsidies given by the countries are generally divided under 3 boxes: green box, blue box and amber box. Green box and blue box subsidies are allowed, and all remaining subsidies fall under the amber box and they are forbidden. Green box and blue box subsidies are mainly used by the developed countries, and they are spelled out in great details in Annex 2 of the Agreement on Agriculture. Here there was another hitch in this regard. Price support subsidies are specially forbidden, and income support subsidies are allowed. Of course, income support subsidies with a few modifications are allowed under Agreement on Agriculture. This militates against the interests of developing countries, because most developing countries provide price support to the crops produced, and they have difficulty in introducing income support to the farmers because of the infrastructural deficits in this regard. And price support is rather easy for the developing countries to introduce, but these price support subsidies are frowned upon in the WTO agreement. Hence, developing countries are at a disadvantage in this regard. The rationale for forbidding price support subsidies is that price support subsidies would distort agricultural market, whereas income support subsidies will not distort and will give a correct market signal to the countries concerned. But whether it is really so in the context of developing countries is a matter of doubt. Under Article 6.4, any product specific support, insofar as it does not exceed 5% of the total value of production, shall be exempt from the calculation of aggregate measurement of support as far as developed countries were concerned. For developing countries, this figure is 10%. Annex 2 spells out green box and blue box subsidies exempt from the reduction commitments. Green box subsidies basically refer to various types of governmental measures which give various kinds of support to the agriculturists, such as environmental subsidies, research subsidies, subsidies given to research, subsidies given to marketing, so on and so forth. All these things come under the green box subsidies. As far as blue box subsidies are concerned, they are the subsidies given to the agriculturists to limit the production of a particular commodity or to limit the number of livestock used in agriculture. These blue box subsidies are something peculiar to the developed countries. For most of the developing countries, the problem is actually to enhance the agricultural output. But most developed countries have a problem of agricultural surplus. They want their farmers to reduce the agricultural production. They provide some kind of income support to the farmers so that they don't grow agricultural produces beyond certain limit. In the recent Bali negotiations, India's program of procurement prices to the farmers was attacked. The issue was procurement. What India was doing is to procure agricultural producers from the farmers at a high level, at a high price, at a price higher than the market price, and sell them to the consumers at less than the market price through various fair price shops. Well, this is covered by the footnote under footnote number 5 under Annex 2 of the Agreement on Agriculture. But the problem is this footnote number 5 says that it is an alternative to public stock holding for food security purposes. But this public stock holding for food security purposes is provided in paragraph 3 of the Annex 2. In brief, paragraph 3 of the Annex 2 and footnote number 5 of the Annex 2, these are considered as two alternative measures. But technically speaking, these are really two different propositions altogether. When public stock holding for food security purposes has to be established under paragraph 3, the both buying and selling of producers shall be at the current market price. In the context of a developing country like India, this would defeat the very purpose of procurement price and fair price shops. Under this circumstance, of course, India's program with regard to procurement price, etc., is covered under paragraph 4 of the Annex 2, which provides for food aid program. Strictly speaking, footnote number 5 should have come under paragraph 4, that is food aid program. India is providing food aid to the weaker sections of the society. This payments made under the food aid program is exempt from the reduction commitment. If only footnote number 5 is given as a footnote under paragraph 4, problem would not have been there. But as was pointed out, even with regard to footnote number 5, problem would not have been there if the external reference price is taken as the current international price. This is logically so, because whatever subsidy given under footnote number 5, that is difference between administered price and external reference price, would be still within the 10% limit as provided under the WTO agreement, provided external reference price is taken as current market price. But word fixed external reference price is not found in the footnote number 5, but according to the text of the WTO, fixed external reference price is defined as the price prevailing in 1986 and 88 in the Annex number 3, paragraph number 7. Now, combining paragraph 7 of Annex 2 with footnote number 5 under Annex 2, I mean, that is, technically speaking, you have to read fixed external reference price under footnote number 5, which is simply not there. It is really a kind of technical problem which somewhat was ignored at the time of negotiation on agreement on agriculture. You see, agreement on agriculture comprises several mathematical formulations, such as 20% reduction over a period of 6 years, so on and so forth. All these were really inserted into the agreement on agriculture to take care of the problems between the USA and EC. But subsequently, they were sought to be imposed upon the rest of the world. Rest of the world many times did not realize its implications. In fact, during the negotiations itself, it was pointed out by the GATT Secretariat that taking this highly narrowly technical viewpoint might disturb, might frustrate some of the WTO provisions. This is one instance in this regard. There is no rhyme or logic in using prices prevailing in 1986 and 88 for this purpose, for the purpose of calculating the subsidies. But it is there, and India has been wrongly accused of violating the WTO discipline. But unfortunately, rest of the world was not sympathetic to India. The reason for this could be, as was pointed out in some foreign newspapers, not Indian newspapers, is that India has a large food stock holding, and India's problem now is India has acquired lot of foodstuff from the farmers. There is not sufficient facility to distribute them among the needy sections of the society, and foreign newspapers report that India is downloading quite a bit of these food stock holdings in the international markets, and many developed countries fear that if India sells this huge amount of grain in international market, it would upset the interests of many developed countries. Well, whether it is really so, how far it is true, we are not in a position to assess. But one thing is certain, when large number of people go hungry and a large number of children are malnourished, if India is selling its food acquired at a high prices in international market at a low prices, it would be nothing less than a crime against Indian people. So I hope India will not indulge in these kinds of activities hereafter. Probably in the days to come, when food security enactment is properly implemented, India may require to use all these food stock holdings to provide food security to Indian citizens. Recently, India ran into problem with regard to the domestic support given to its agriculturists. India has been operating price support program for wheat and paddy. Commission on Agricultural Costs and Prices, a statutory body, fixed the minimum support price, that is MSP, in such a way as to cover costs and reasonable profits for farmers. Hence, the prices paid to the farmers could be above the market price most of the time. This was intended to prevent the price fluctuation and put the farmers in difficulty. And this has created some complications. This falls under price support mechanism. India has been with the government policy to ensure food security, there is a likelihood of the specific support exceeding 10% limit. Hence, the India sought exemption for food security purpose. This was the main issue in the recent Bali round of the negotiations. The relevant legal provisions in this regard are Para 3 and footnote 5 of the Annex 2 of the Agreement on Agriculture. Para 3 of the Agreement on Agriculture provides for public stock holding for food security purposes, and expenditure incurred would be exempt from the reduction commitments. But it must be noted here that while building up this public stock holding for food security purposes, both purchases and sales should be at the current market prices. In other words, this operates more like a buffer stock, to ensure any shortfall of production at a given point of time. This is more suitable in the context of developed countries, and this does not take into account the problems of the weaker sections of the society who do not have sufficient income to buy agricultural produces. Hence, there is a problem in this regard. Footnote 5 provides for an alternative scheme whereunder the purchase and sale would be at administered prices, but in such cases differences between acquisition price and external reference price shall be accounted for in the aggregate measurement of support. Para 9 of the Annex 3 provides that external reference price, or fixed external reference price rather, shall be based on the years between 1986 and 1988. But it must be noted here that footnote 5 footnote 5 found in Annex 2 does not speak about fixed external reference price. It speaks only about the external reference price. The logic is that when the acquisition price is at a high level, the difference between acquisition price and external market price should be counted while preparing aggregate measurement of support. Now, normally speaking, external reference price should be international price prevailing at that point of time, but fixed external reference price provided in paragraph 7 of the Annex 3 speaks of reference prices or market prices prevailing between 1986 and 88. This is completely illogical because prices prevailing in 1986 and 88 would be totally irrelevant to the prices in the 1912, 13, 14 because of the inflation and because of various other considerations. But still, Agreement on Agriculture insists upon fixed external reference price as the price prevailing in the international market between 1986 and 88. Logically, to calculate the domestic support in the case of procurement, the difference between procurement price and international market price at the given time should be taken into account. International price as of 1986 and 1988 does not make any sense, but still India could not muster adequate support in the Bali round. India is right in insisting on specific exemption for food security purpose and refusing to agree to trade facilitation agreement. In the absence thereof, there is a standstill in the WTO. India is wrongly accused of blocking WTO negotiations. It may be noted that developing countries refuse even to obey WTO rulings in the Agreement on Agriculture. Upland cotton case is an example in this regard. Coming to this upland cotton case, Brazil filed a complaint against the USA for cotton subsidies which the USA gives to its cotton farmers. A panel established by the WTO found that USA subsidies given to the cotton farmers were illegal as per the WTO agreement, but still the USA dragged its feet on implementation of this agreement, of this verdict. Even after a few years, USA was not in a position to implement the verdict of the panel established by the WTO. Then what the US did was US entered into a compromise with Brazil, whereunder it would make some payment to the Brazil, and Brazil would not press the claim further. And accordingly, the US made payments for a few years and thereafter stopped the payment. Then the Brazil threatened the US with retaliatory measures by way of punitive tariffs. At that stage, USA entered into negotiation with Brazil and promised a lump sum of money, whereunder the Brazil would withdraw the suit completely. This is totally against the WTO dispute settlement mechanism. A member is supposed to implement the verdict of the panel or appellate body as the case may be. Now, the result of this this outcome is that many West African countries whose sole source of livelihood was cotton, they were very badly affected. How? They were not in a position to move against the USA partly because of their heavy dependence on the USA, and also they could not afford heavy cost of litigation inside the WTO. Had the USA complied with the verdict given in the upland cotton case, West African cotton farmers would have been benefited. If the USA withdrew the subsidies to its cotton farmers, international price of the cotton was likely to go up. It would benefit West African countries, but that is not possible now because Brazil has withdrawn the suit, and that is in fact there is no provision under the WTO for Brazil to withdraw the suit. Probably international community, now what is the lesson we draw out of from this? Probably international community it is too early for international community for any kind of agreement on agriculture. Hence it is better that agreement on agriculture is kept in cold storage and we move forward in other areas. The point is simply this: developed countries and developing countries both are more or less on the same page with regard to agreement on agriculture. Developed countries are not in a position to undertake the commitments with regard to agreement on agriculture because domestic interests are too powerful for them to resist. Whereas as far as developing countries are concerned, agriculture is too fundamental to their economy. They could not, developing countries, their problem is quite different. Agriculture is in doldrums in most of the developing countries. In countries like India, farmers are committing suicide, and the kind of agriculture which we have to introduce, there is a lot of difference of opinion. There are people who advocate agriculture only on a different footing, such as organic agriculture, so on and so forth. There is some kind of agitation against chemical farming, in the context of environmental protection, so on and so forth. There are a number of problems. Under these circumstances, it is better that agriculture would be in the domestic sphere of developing countries and developed countries, and whatever transactions take place between developed countries and developing countries could be the type of transactions which had taken place so far. Under the GATT, though agriculture was included in the GATT, in the sense that there was no exception with regard to agriculture under the GATT, goods as defined under the GATT would include agricultural produce as well. USA found it difficult to enforce the penal verdict in the case of dairy products, importation of dairy products from Netherlands. That shows that developed countries were not in a position to implement the agreement on agriculture, and Europe soon followed the suit because its common agricultural policies required regulation of international trade in agricultural products. Still, between 1950 and 1990, agricultural trade was going on between developed countries and developing countries, and that reasonably served the purpose of the international community by and large. Now there is no reason why we should bring back agriculture into international legal arena. It may be noted that same countries, USA and European community, were responsible to push the agriculture out of the legal framework in the 50s. Same USA and Europe were responsible to bring the agriculture into the WTO in the 90s. But there was a prolonged negotiation between USA and EC with regard to the agriculture, and it may be noted that prolongation of Uruguay round for over 8 years, that is between 1986 and 1994, was mainly because the disagreement between the USA and the European community with regard to the agriculture. Finally, as a result of the meeting at Blair House in Washington in 1992, this impasse was broken and some kind of agreement was put between USA and the EC. But this agreement was devised actually to sort out the problem between the USA and EC. But the unfortunate thing is, these provisions which were negotiated between USA and EC were imposed upon the rest of the world, and in fact they were thrust down the throat of the rest of the world, and rest of the world has been suffering as a result of this imposition. So hence the logical solution should be, let agriculture be kept out of the agreement on agriculture. In a sense, agreement on agriculture is already out of the scope of agreement on agriculture, because peace clause provided in the agreement on agriculture says that beyond the period of implementation, once the period of implementation is over, whatever subsidies you give can be subjected to the disciplines provided under subsidies and countervailing agreement on subsidies and countervailing measures. Now, technically speaking, it is possible for a country like India to impose countervailing duties on the importation of food products from the USA or from the EC. But despite the legal authorization to do so under the peace clause, no country has so far resorted to countervailing duties. That is because of the pressure from the developed countries. So, under these circumstances, it is better make the peace clause some kind of permanent and take away the agreement on agriculture. Let every country shape its agricultural policy in the way it deems fit. That would be in the interest of the entire international community. Now, to review whatever we have covered so far, as I told you, agreement on agriculture was there in the original GATT, but it was in the sense that GATT, the definition of the goods did not exempt the agriculture, but still the US in a case involving Netherlands with regard to dairy products, the panel found that the US was wrong in providing in restricting the imports of dairy products from the EC. Hence, that when the panel ruled against the US refused to obey the panel ruling. It sought the waiver. Under the GATT, there is a provision for the waiver, provided a special majority of GATT members agree to that particular waiver. It is not that other countries were happy about this waiver, but given the predominant position of the USA in the international arena, other countries could not resist. Now, once the US sought the waiver to take the agriculture out of the GATT, EC followed the suit immediately. What the EC did was, in pursuance of its common agricultural policy, it also sought waiver. When both USA and EC freed themselves from the obligation with regard to agriculture under the GATT, practically agreement on agriculture went out of the GATT. Of course, rest of the world did not really bother about it. Each country pursued the agreement on agriculture in its own way. This continued for a long period of time. Then came the WTO regime on agreement on agriculture. It provided for disciplines in three areas mainly. One is in the area of market access, another in the area of domestic support, and third is in the area of export subsidies. The greatest advancement on agreement on agriculture is with regard to the market access. What was provided was all non-tariff barriers shall be converted into tariffs, and these tariffs must be reduced over a period of time. Differential periods were given to the developed and developing countries. But one point which we should note here is that this tariffification process really went against the interests of developing countries, in the sense that even at the end of reduction of the tariffs, the restrictions in the developed countries remained fairly high, whereas developing countries lost whatever cover they had to prevent importation of agriculture from the rest of the world. A country like India could somehow survive the onslaught of agricultural import from the rest of the world, because India had lots of quantitative restrictions for the balance of payments purposes. For a long period of time, India was imposing heavy quantitative restriction on every good, including agricultural product. Hence, there was not much of a problem, but India is likely to face the problem hereafter, because India was asked in India quantitative restrictions case to dismantle all quantitative restrictions. Well, India is facing rather some problem in this regard. Now, domestic support, as we have seen that India had its own price support program. In the recent time, India has been making effort to move towards income support methodology. All Aadhaar schemes and every Indian to have a separate bank account, so on and so forth. These are all measures in direction of providing for income support. But many developing countries may find this very difficult, and as I told you, price support is not only the only way available to the developing countries, and it is necessary for providing the food security as well. You see, farmers have to be supported, and to provide support to the farmers spread all over the country, price support mechanism may be the only way out. Hence, India's opposition to any kind of, I would say opposition, India's insistence on price support may be needed, and India has run into difficulties as I explained in this regard.